Hi everyone, welcome to the One DEI thing. DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I am Natasha Green, the project lead for this series, and I am super excited that you decided to join or listen to this on replay. Shout out to the folks who will be replaying this. You get mad love from me also. This is an AnitaB.org webinar series in which men share one thing they did to improve their company's culture. Absolutely. There are probably tons of things these individuals are doing, but I decided one thing would be enough in the time we have together. All speakers wanted to create a culture so that employees feel that they can grow, learn, and have equal opportunity for advancement in their highest individual potential, no matter who they are, where they're from, what their race is, how they look, or even how old they are. Each speaker believes that an individual potential should not be restricted because of discriminatory practices. This initiative stems from AnitaB.org's mission, where we envision a future where the people who imagine and build technology mirror the people and societies for whom they build it. We do a lot of work connecting, guiding, and inspiring women and our allies to ensure anywhere you see technology being built, you will also see an equal representation of women building and leading those technological products or services, and getting paid fairly. I believe in order for this to happen, many individuals at all levels in the organization will have to advocate and do their part, wherever they are in the organizational chart. That person can shift an organization's culture to be inclusive and a place where everyone feels like they belong and that they are reaching their full potential. We thank you for joining us today, so please grab a notepad and pen and take some notes.
So yeah, when I saw Natasha's plan here for the one day thing, I thought about diversity, equality, inclusion is very important to me personally, and there are lots of things that I try to do. I'm like, well, what's one big area where I've probably actually been impactful here, and really it's been in supporting internships. So pretty much the idea here is that's improve representation through internships. So today, talk a little bit about my personal background, setting the stage, and talk about the core idea of, essentially why internships. Talk a little, then kind of go more into my story, talking about specifically 3 internship programs, looking at the College Cyber Defenders when I was working at the NASA SOC, and essentially moving forward from where we are today, and then opening it up for questions. Feel free to jump in. I think anyone can unmute themselves and jump in with questions at any time. I've got the Zoom window in the background so I can run through my slides. So if you type something in the chat, I'm not going to hear you, but we can pull that up when I get through my slides in case someone just wants to put something in the chat there. We'll get to that then. So in terms of my background, standard sort of pure computer science background. I originally started in aerospace engineering. That's why I went to Purdue, big aerospace school, and discovered I didn't like differential equations, but linear algebra is fantastic to me. So ended up in the computer science path, got my bachelor's there, got my initial job out of college, and then ended up at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. And when they came to recruit me, I'm like, wow, Lawrence Livermore National Lab, I thought you needed a PhD to work there. And they go, heck no, in fact, we'll pay for you to get your PhD. Say no more, I'm there. And one little extra takeaway, if you can get people to pay for your grad school, by all means, do that. So sure enough, they paid for me to go to the University of California at Davis, and did my PhD in computer science there as well. Just before I wrapped that up, much to Lawrence Livermore's chagrin, I imagine, since they had paid for 8 years of my higher education, I moved over to become a contractor at NASA and became the implementation lead for the Security Operations Center at NASA. And that's when I finished up my PhD. Now, I talk about my grandfather was Olegala Lakota. And, normally people might start with that in terms of their diverse background, but it's an interesting story for me. I was raised thinking, I'm pretty much primarily German, European sort of heritage. And only discovered in my 30s, about 10 years ago now, that my grandfather was full-blood member of the Oglala Lakota. And it's really kind of impactful from a diversity standpoint, kind of this idea, we talk a lot about gender being fluid, but something like your racial and ethnic identity can also be fluid, that as we grow and move through life, learn more about our past, our culture, our heritage, we discover that, you know, for many of us, it's much richer than we might have known as we were growing up. So, you know, diversity had already been important to me at that point, and even more so now that it's like, okay, you know, this is not only something that is part of me, part of my blood, but I think there's an interesting story there about my grandfather, who passed away when I was just about 3-4 years old. So I barely remember him, but the simple fact that he left the reservation as a young man and pretty much hid his past. I mean, my mother had no idea until 10 years ago. And, you know, I think my grandmother may have well passed away, never knowing. And so that's, you know, very interesting, says a lot about our society, our history, and I internalized a lot of that about, you know, this makes diversity all the more important to me personally. So from NASA, I went into consulting and software sales, and that led to eventually founding BubaWorks, where I am today. BubaWorks being doing full scope information security consulting. So, you know, talking about why internships. Well, I think the numbers here, not really going to surprise anyone. If you're in Anita Borg, you're kind of familiar with the background here about, you know, we look at the US population for women, over 50% of the US population, yet only 21% of computer science degrees. And I believe these are the stats from the National Science Foundation. I believe this is all degrees, undergrad and graduate, from 2017. In Hispanics, similarly, 18.3% of the population, 4.5% of degrees. African Americans, 13%, again, about 4%. Native Americans, you know, pulling into what's hitting my background personally, 1.3% of the American population, and essentially none of the computer science degrees. I put the, you know, about none, because the number was actually so small there that NSF had to squash it to prevent leaking any sort of information about the participants. So it may have actually been 0, it may have been like 1, 2, 3, something like that, and they didn't want to give a specific number because it would, you know, probably personally identify someone. Now, interestingly, even though women at least are, you know, 21% of the degrees, they make up about 25.6% of the computer science workforce, working in typically computer science staffed jobs. So, you know, I think that right there says a lot about our computer science programs at the collegiate level, driving a lot of these groups away, even if a lot of these people end up saying, hey, this is good work, this is something I want to do with my career. Now, in terms of women, at least, we have a lot more data, and you know, especially from the UNESCO and Computer Research Association, that you know, females outperform males in terms of STEM, math and science sort of tasks early on through elementary, and tends to be in the late elementary, getting into middle school, that interest really falls off. And you know, the STEM participation tends to be pretty level in high school. Socioeconomic factors, particularly talking, you know, less about gender, more about race and ethnicity, that those aren't necessarily major factors in STEM participation in high school, but socioeconomic factors tend to weigh bigger there. In college is where we see a major change, and you know, we don't have good numbers between enrollment and graduation. No one's really tracking that very well to see, you know, well, what are these these percentages here in terms of enrollment coming into one's first year as an undergrad versus where they end up graduating. Nevertheless, it's, you know, the basic sort of knowledge that we have here is, you know, looking at case studies and so forth, is that women are leaving the discipline at disproportionate numbers during their higher education studies. And, you know, certainly getting into the world of work in their career cycle. But, you know, I really think it starts here in terms of the, you know, during higher education that we're seeing, you know, a lot of this discrepancy start. So that kind of leads to the, well, what can most of us do? Certainly there's a lot to be said here about what universities can do. But for those of us that aren't working in higher education, I was a professor for a number of years, but I wasn't early on or now. But, you know, what can the vast majority of us do in terms of helping out, you know, underrepresented groups throughout their college cycle? And that kind of led to the idea of the internship program. Now, this dovetailed well into what I was doing at Livermore, getting into doing security work there professionally. And we had a big problem that we couldn't hire security people because they're so much in demand. So it was kind of, you know, we're left with a buy or build. And this was true across the Department of Energy complex. So Sandia actually started, Sandia National Laboratory has 2 locations. One of those is literally across the street from Lawrence Livermore, there in Livermore, California. And that's where the College Cyber Defender program started. So I ended up meeting its founder there. And he said, hey, you know, our sponsor in DOE wants to see this happen at other national laboratories, seeing as how you're literally across the street. Seems like a natural place to grow the program. So I worked with our internship office at Lawrence Livermore and really kind of spearheaded, you know, championed the project to start the College Cyber Defenders. Got money from Department of Energy to support the program, and it was pretty much a match sort of, hey, we'll kick in 50% of the funds if the program's using the interns, kick in 50% of the funds. So then I can go to the programs and be like, hey, you want some super cheap interns? And, you know, normally you talk to folks and they're like, hey, you know, you want someone to do 3 months of work for just a few K? And they're like, oh, well, that's cheap. Well, I'll give it a try. You know, it's very little to lose in that case. So started up the program, initially did 3 students the first year, and then it just started growing exponentially, and ran it for 3 years total. And during that time, I didn't keep track. I had the records there at Livermore. Now all I have is kind of my own personal records and my connections on LinkedIn and so forth. So, you know, out of the about 24 students that we had total, I served as a primary or secondary mentor for 16 of those students. And that included 7 women and 2 people of color. So the, you know, from a raw numbers standpoint, that's, I think, not that bad. It becomes a little more representative of, you know, out of 16 folks, yeah, that's almost 50%, and you know, 1/8 sort of representation there. So, and that was really a conscious decision on my part that you know, DOE was paying for, hey, you know, let's get more people interested in computer security, and I said, hey, you know, if we're paying to get people interested, let's get a good cross section of people interested. And, you know, I wasn't trying to be, you know, hey, let's, you know, go get, you know, it wasn't meant to be a internship program for women or for people of color. Just the idea that, hey, we're going to have this internship program, so let's ensure that it's representative, even if our field of candidates isn't necessarily just due to the numbers that are there in school. And in that process, I think when you give people positive internship experiences, it helps retain them in the field. Now, you know, obviously from employer standpoint, I'm like, hey, these people are good. We want to keep them on, keep them coming back. But I'm very happy if we have good people just staying in the field. I see too many times that there are great computer scientists who feel like culturally it's not a good fit for them. And some people are just like, oh, this is like a gaming culture. It's a bunch of guys that play Call of Duty or something and just want to do that. And that's not me. And I really want everyone to see that computer science is more than that, and that we really need everyone to be able to contribute to it, such that we get a better cross-section of ideas. Within security, this is critical because let me tell you, the attackers aren't they aren't like, hey, we're just going to get a bunch of Eurocentric men to to be our attackers here. It's you look at the core of people in the People's Liberation Army, in China's army, that are focused on doing cyber attacks, and they have literally thousands of troops that are assigned to do this, and it's a pretty broad representation from across China. They aren't just like, oh, we're just getting people from the Northeast to do it. They're taking the talent from everywhere that they can get it and throwing it at it, and that allows the attackers to be pretty agile, to think of things, think of ways around your defenses. So as defenders, and that's really the idea of the internship program, the cyber defenders, we want to have diversity there to think of, hey, what are some new and different ways to defend ourselves? What are things the attackers might try that we haven't thought of yet that we need to defend against before it becomes a problem? So from Livermore, I moved over to NASA, and the interesting thing at NASA was that they've got many internship programs there, right? At Livermore, there was a single internship office that I coordinated with, and College Cyber Defenders was a program out of that office that I was the primary investigator for. At NASA, they have like 2 different civil service internship programs and numerous contractor internship programs. So it was really kind of a hodgepodge. And, I didn't care. I'm just like, I just want good interns to come in here and help us out and give them a positive experience. So there we were able to attract 9 students, including 3 women of color and 1 person of color. So maybe not quite as good of numbers as we were able to attract at Livermore. And a lot of that really went to the pool. I mean, I went in there with the same sort of mentality saying, hey, this sort of recruiting process worked really well at Livermore. Let's try to follow it up here. So I tried, but with the hodgepodge of programs, each program had a much smaller pool of candidates. And within those pools of candidates, there weren't necessarily as many women or people of color. And it was really much more difficult to find a cross-section of people to really get that sort of diversity in the program. So, like I said, from there I went into to consulting. It's a lot harder to get interns in there, and then into software sales, and it was impossible there. I tried to tell my boss numerous times on getting interns in there, like, hey, we've got all these little problems that we can just like throw interns at so that I can focus on the sales and they can do a bunch of the back end stuff that I saw as a necessary but not the best use of my time, something you can throw an intern at. But didn't pan out. Eventually that company got acquired, and I started up BuboWorks, and got thinking again about, well, now I'm running the show, so let's think about internships again. And to that end, I think this really kind of paints this is really the summary here of how I think organizations or people contributing to organizations should think about internships in general. First off, they're really a critical piece of your hiring pipeline, and it's the try before you buy approach, really. That you bring people in for 3 months or bring them in for a couple of years. So you've got like 6 months or so with them, and you get a really good idea of, how good an employee this person is going to be. And you can really get an idea of aptitude, even when they're, lower division sort of students, that you get an idea if, they got the ideas, and give them a few more years, let them graduate, get their bachelor's, and they're going to be awesome. And, for a lot of companies, especially a lot of larger companies, diversity, equality, inclusion is important to them. So let's bring, not just try to attract diverse candidates, later career, or, like, hey, you just graduated, let's try to get you, but let's attract them early, get them into the pipeline after their first year in university, and get them in the pipeline. And that really goes to building in diversity early. I recognize building a company from scratch. One of the things I want to do here is not be in the state of growing the company to 20, 30 people and go like, oh, we're all a bunch of white men. This is no good. We really want to, I have the opportunity here to say, hey, let's recognize this, that diversity is important from the get-go, and build out our team that way. So that goes right back to the hiring pipeline. As I explained already, doing security work, the diversity is critical there. And, this is really because diversity, the core diversity I see is that people have different backgrounds and bring different ideas to the table. And that's really the critical part when it comes to information security. I think great internship programs really improve the overall field retention. And I gotta say, the most important thing in running an internship program is just meeting with the interns. Every single day, you gotta go meet with the interns, and just be like, it's 10 o'clock, block it off on your calendar or whatever, and just go and you do your walkthrough every single day. And I think that's really why my internship programs, I would consider a success. All of the mentees I had over the years, I keep in touch with, and the feedback from them has been overwhelmingly positive. And a lot of them had other internship programs. And the chief criticism in those other programs was, I never saw my mentor. They hired me, dropped some work on my desk the first day, never came back. And that's a recipe for disaster. So, really, I think the primary thing in making these things successful, and this is true regardless of someone's background, is simply make the time to meet with them every single day. And the thing you'll find about interns is that they're extremely productive. I had so many interns that I said, hey, here's this project. It'll probably take you 3 months. I'll check in with you every day and, see what you can do on it. End of the first week, they're like, okay, that's done. What do I do now? And I'm like, that was supposed to last you the whole summer. Give me the weekend to think about this. And, that goes back to the idea of, these people bring new ideas to the table. And they'd oftentimes find, quicker, better ways of doing things that I never even thought of. So, to that end, they can be very productive and consequently very cost effective. Even if an intern gets, just like one little project done over the cost of the entire summer, quite frankly, interns are cheap. You have a hard time arguing with, maybe it's not the highest quality work that you're going to get. Sometimes what I'll do sometimes is take a few interns and give them the same project, and it's like, hey, we can just pick the best one off of this. And like I said, you got to keep them engaged, meet with them daily, and oftentimes they'll finish stuff up. And that was one of the criticisms I heard of other internship programs. They're like, yeah, I did my project there in a week, and then I was left to do nothing but web surf for the entire summer. And some people might think that sitting around, being paid to web surf all day sounds like a lot of fun, but it's not. Nobody thinks it is. Certainly, no one who's trying to build up their career, very early career, and it turns them off not just to the organization but to the field in general. That I think that's all too often what scares folks away. So keep them engaged, and I think there are a lot of positives that come out of it. So that that's pretty much my one day thing.
Yay, thank you. So at this time, while people put themselves off me to ask a question, I'm actually interested in this idea of, did you do something along the lines as teaching your interns how to maybe keep like notes on the conversations you had with them along the way? Were there any other soft skills you taught them as you were walking around, or you met with them daily? Because I know it's not only just seeing them that did it. Was there probably something that you dropped, maybe a dose of wisdom? What else was there besides that?
I didn't talk too much to them about soft skills unless I saw an area where there was an issue. So, for instance, you get one example is a lot of folks, 1 year of college under their belt, come into an internship program and may not understand appropriate work attire. And so that might be one thing that I'd have to have a delicate conversation with them about. And, NASA and Livermore, pretty much all the national labs, are extremely casual workplaces. It's a shorts, t-shirt, and sandals sort of environment. And consequently, people hear casual and have to explain to them that you still have to have some level of decorum here. We aren't going to the beach. So that's one thing if there was an issue like that. Otherwise, a lot of it was pretty ad hoc. I'd say I didn't have anything prepared in terms of, this is how we handle meetings, or, this is how you keep project notes, or that sort of thing. I would drop it in as it seemed appropriate, when talking to someone about, hey, writing up these results, we're looking for something like this. I might give them an example of, here's an example of a good scientific report. So, use that as a template and get the idea for, the sort of level that these things are written at, or something of that nature.
Absolutely. Anyone?